Good evening, everybody, and a Happy New Year to you all. I'd like to welcome participants to this meeting of Full Council and any members of the public watching online. The meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel, and a recording of the meeting will remain online for 6 months. If you are making a representation to the meeting, you are consenting to the use of those sound recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. For housekeeping purposes, a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, please make your way to the nearest fire exit. So we move on to the meeting. Agenda item 1, apologies. We have apologies from councillors Tuck, Lewis, Collins and Bassett Smith. Is anybody aware of any more apologies? Okay. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare? No. Agenda item 3, communications by myself. I've very little to add, really. I visited Cheltenham Open Door on Christmas Day, and Mark, the chef, served up a fantastic Christmas lunch for the guests. And I think Cheltenham will be a much poorer town without all of the volunteers. So I'd just like to say a huge thank you to those at Open Door and the many other organisations in our town. I would also like to place on record the thanks of this council to Louis Savage, who's had to stand down as councillor for Backledown due to work and family reasons. He brought a lot to the debates in this council, and I wish him well, as I'm sure you all do. Agenda item 5, we have no public questions. I've done it again, Councillor Hay. I missed you out last time as well. I'm so sorry. Over to you.
I'll survive. Thank you, Mayor. Like yourself, it will be very short, as you can tell from my little piece of paper rather than my reams of paper I usually do. But there's a couple of things I wanted to mention is that, as you know, just before Christmas, the consultation on the National Planning Policy Framework has come out. It's an opportunity for all of us to make comments on that. And of course, this council will be making a submission of its own to that consultation in due course. The government also made an announcement, again, just before Christmas, that they were providing quite a lot of money, of which Cheltenham's been allocated some, for extra housing to be built or bought, particularly in relation to our refugees and asylum seekers, etc. Because I think the government have actually realised that it's costing them a bomb to keep people in homes or in accommodation that they can't move on from, because a lot of authorities simply don't have the required amount of accommodation. So that is currently being worked up as a submission to go back to government on that. The other 2 bits are that to say that we have just, most members perhaps will have seen it on the public site, but in line with our climate change supplementary planning document, we have just purchased 9 carbon neutral or carbon zero homes, which is really exciting for us. We've also added another 5 affordable homes out on the Sherdington Road to our portfolio for Cheltenham Borough Homes. So part of our commitment of our £180 million is to provide more housing for our residents in Cheltenham. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. Agenda item 5, public questions. We have none. Agenda item 8, member questions. We have none. So we'll move on to agenda item 7, which is the Boundary Commission Electoral Review. And I'd like to invite the Executive Director for Finance, Assets and Regeneration and Electoral Registration Officer, Paul Jones, to introduce the report.
At last. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So on the 1st of November 2022, the Local Government Boundary Commission for England published its proposals for new electoral arrangements for Cheltenham. The Commission proposed that 40 councillors should be elected to Cheltenham in future across 20 wards, as well as proposing new ward boundaries across the authority. A public consultation on these proposals has run from the 1st of November 2022 to the 9th of January 2023, i.e. today. Once the Commission has considered all responses to the consultation, they will aim to publish their final recommendations in March 2023. They will then lay a draft order in both Houses of Parliament. Subject to parliamentary scrutiny, the new electoral arrangements are scheduled to come into effect at the authorities' elections in May 2024. I personally would like to thank all members who submitted views, and these are captured within Appendix 3 to the report. Officers have then worked with group leaders to formalise these into a set of formal recommendations. Appendix 2 of the report and the relevant maps, if approved by Council this evening, will be submitted to the Commission as this Council's formal response to the consultation. As stated in the report, this response does not prohibit any individual member or group from making their own submission. I therefore open it up for officers to take any questions. Thank you.
Any member?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, Happy New Year, everybody. Hope it's a healthy and happy New Year. Can I start by thanking Paul Jones and Kim Smith for the work they've done on this, which I think has been very much appreciated. I'm sure we would all agree with that. It's quite a complicated thing, and you pull a few votes off there and you put them there, and the whole thing has to hang together. So thank you, first of all. That's my first point. A couple of questions from me. Bluntly, I think we are, as a package, as a group, we're very happy to support this. I tended to think originally the proposals were a bit, didn't recognise community, and I think that this proposal does recognise community. First question is, whatever the proposals are when they're approved, will we be writing as a council to those voters who move from one ward to another one, and what might the knock-on effects be on polling stations? So obviously they will vote at different polling stations, might have some effect there. And I think that's all the significant questions I can think of at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harman. Would you like to answer that?
Thank you, Councillor Harman. Kim and I did actually discuss the implications of that particular question before the meeting. So what we've agreed, as soon as we've got ratification through those Acts of Parliament that the new ward boundaries are in place, we will look to write out to all those voters that are impacted either through a ward change or through a change in polling station.
Is there any other member who wishes to ask a question? No? Okay, so we'll move on to the debate. So if any member wishes to speak, you've got 5 minutes each.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a couple of things. Is that I think the question that Tim asked was really relevant. And actually, sadly, we have to go through this Boundary Commission review. They will make the decision that they're going to make. I'm really pleased that we've managed to work across party to put this submission through. I think the bit that's disappointing is that there's no money actually set aside by government for us to pay to let all those residents know. So we will have to make sure that that's in our budget, and we will have to find the money for that in due course. I think my other disappointment is that, of course, we've just been through a parliamentary boundary review, and we've now about to conclude our submission, but the County Council are now also going through a boundary commission. So we're going to end up with that whole, it just seems a bit nonsensical, and a load of money that all three areas have had boundary commission reviews. In my mind, we could have done that collectively to look at all of it, which would have saved a bucket load of money, I'm sure. And particularly given that will, as Tim rightly said, thanks to Kim and her team and Paul, their part in this, but they've had to go through that with the Boundary Commission on the parliamentary one, and they're going to have to go through that again, all additional work for the County Council one. But my sincere thanks from us as a group for the work that you guys have put into this. We might not get what we have asked for, but at least we as an authority have put in, because we're the guys with the local knowledge and our knowing our communities and what works and what works for them and what doesn't. We might not get what we've asked for, but you can't say that we haven't actually asked for it and put forward our suggestions. So thank you.
Any other member? Councillor Fifield.
Thank you, Mayor. And I totally agree with what Councillor Hay said, which is nice. I just wanted to highlight, and I think it very much echoes what you said about the relation between the different boundary reviews, is that, for example, one of the issues that I raised in the members' proposal, which has been sort of subsumed by what Councillor Willingham suggested for the St Peter's Swindon Village boundary, is that if the initial proposals that have been suggested were to go through, it would inevitably lead to a massive redrawing of the county division areas, because the coupling of those divisions would be affected. And I find it quite disappointing that such a major change has sort of been smuggled in, that actually there hasn't been much of a discourse between the relation of those two different boundary reviews and the fact they aren't happening at the same time, I find as well. So I totally agree, and I'm really happy that we've had a cross-party consensus on that, and I think it only will increase our chances of getting the suggested changes put through. So thank you.
Councillor Flynn, can you put your mic on? Thank you.
I'll start again. I spent many hours looking at the maps, researching, communicating with officers and others, and trying to work out how Hester's Way could stay as it currently is while addressing the neighbouring ward issues. Hester's Way should stay as it is because the proposals don't reflect the interests and identities of the local community, and they don't promote effective and convenient local government. They do not ensure that the new wards can be represented effectively by their elected representatives. The changes to Hester's Way conflict with the Hester's Way neighbourhood plan process, the area which was agreed based on the ward boundary that Cabinet determined reflected the local community. The new Hester's Way ward will be an area of higher deprivation. Over time, the effect of this and the way the area will be perceived will have a detrimental effect on the community. There's a proven link between living somewhere with a bad reputation and experiencing poorer physical and mental health. The proposed boundary changes will likely see less than 1,000 votes cast in Hester's Way in future local elections. Democratic credibility is lacking when turnout is so low. Changes to a boundary that lowers turnout in a ward that already has the lowest turnout should be robustly opposed. Where turnout is very low, people are less inclined to vote due to the low turnout descriptive social norm, lowering turnout further. In their analysis of time investment and councillor roles in England and Wales, Thrasher AL used ward-level data to show that councillors who represent deprived areas spend up to 6 hours more attending to council duties than colleagues who represent more affluent areas. Changing a boundary so a ward becomes more deprived, and therefore there's an even greater discrepancy in hours needed for the elected representatives to be effective, is not ensuring residents can be effectively represented. Obviously, there's a process in front of us now that has to be completed, but what's agreed today should be viewed as an interim measure. The conclusion I came to after hours of studying all this is that it's wrong. We shouldn't be messing with this road and that, taking out our erasers and scrubbing out one line to draw another line in somewhere else. We should be erasing all the ward boundaries and starting from scratch. We shouldn't wait for the Boundary Commission to tell us it's doing a review and have it force its changes on us with a few amendments we might put forward in a report to Council. We can request our own review. We need to take control of the process and take ownership of our wards and how they are defined. I would like to request that the leader supports the continuation of the Boundary Review Working Group, open to all, and that group meets regularly and takes a novel approach to how wards in the town are comprised. That is, that it starts with no boundaries, that it engages with the community in a meaningful way, that it doesn't stop at drawing up new ward boundaries, but also looks at the naming of the wards and the sizes of the wards, that it looks to forming wards that are as diverse as possible. It might be that fewer larger wards would enable more effective local government, increase engagement with the democratic process, and mean a healthier town and council. Whatever the boundary review group comes up with, it should be bold and fit for the future, because this silly moving a few streets here and there is a pathetic way of dealing with an incredibly important issue, the issue of the rights of Cheltenham residents to be represented in the fairest and most democratic way possible. So I will be abstaining on this, and I will be doing my own submission to the Boundary Commission. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Hay, did you want to respond to the question by Councillor Flynn?
Could Councillor Flynn, I'm really sorry, but could you reiterate your question of request? It was that we continued with the Boundary Commission review group?
Sorry, yes, I was speaking quite quickly because of trying to fit it into 3 minutes, which isn't ideal. I thought we'd been reduced to 3 now.
Carry on, Councillor Flynn.
Oh, okay.
2 extra minutes, not bad.
Okay. So the question was that yes, I'd like the boundary review group to continue, and that it takes a sort of a look at the whole town and doesn't confine itself to the existing boundaries, and looks at the best way for the town to be divided so that so that we get the best possible outcome for residents when it comes to democratic accountability and the way that they're represented.
Councillor Hay.
I think the answer, we could potentially do that, but at the end of the day, the Boundary Commission decide when they're going to actually come to us. And this, I mean, in theory, we can do that, but it is a big load of work to do at this moment in time. And I think right here, right now, I'd rather take that and come back to you, Councillor Flynn, simply because I'd need to understand actually what that would mean in terms of officer time to do that. I think you make a good point, and we haven't had a Boundary Commission review for 20 years, which is very unusual. So, you know, I think maybe a time of when the Boundary Commission make their decision now, once we know the outcome of the parliamentary review, combine that with what's coming with the district, let's look at that holistically as to what that actually means for Cheltenham as a whole, if that's fair enough.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to join in the debate? Silence. So, does the electoral registration officer have anything else he wishes to add? No. Okay then, so we'll move to a vote on the recommendations. If you could use your electronic voting system, and I'm taking them all as one job lot. So, vote away. So the voting is 33 for, nobody against, 2 abstentions. So those recommendations have been carried. Thank you. Agenda item 8 is any other item which I determine is urgent and which requires a decision. I have nothing to add. So on that note, I will close the meeting. Thank you all for coming. Safe journey home. Mind your head.